Hello and welcome to the mind map about Year 9 Ecology. Here is the mind map in full, and now we're about to zoom in. The first thing we're going to go through is vocabulary, because biology is very vocab rich. Ecology is the study of ecosystems. Abiotic factors are any living organisms that influence the survival of others. Abiotic factors are any non-living factors that influence the survival of any organism. An environment is a list of biotic and abiotic factors. An ecosystem is the interaction between the biotic and abiotic factors. Habitat is the place where an organism lives. Microhabitat is the specific place where an organism lives. A niche is the role of an organism in an ecosystem. A biome is an area with a dominant vegetation and climate. A species is a group of reproductively isolated organisms. A population is a group of the same species in the same place at the same time, and a community is a collection of different species in the same place at the same time. Next, we're going to look at interdependencies, and with interdependencies, there is symbiosis and others. Symbiosis is classically commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism. Commensalism is where species A has absolutely no effect on species B. Mutualism is where species A and B both benefit from the interaction. Parasitism is where species A feeds off species B, and within parasitism there is an endoparasite and an ectoparasite. An endoparasite lives inside the host, like a tapeworm, and an ectoparasite lives outside the host, like a tick. Now on to other relationships. There is predator-prey, where species A eats species B. Competition, where species A and B compete for the same resource, like food or shelter or water. Herbivory is when an animal species eats a plant species. Amensalism is where a species negatively impacts another species, like a tall tree is shadowing a smaller tree. And antibiosis is where species A produces some sort of chemical that affects species B, like the pine tar that drops from pine trees that stops all weeds growing around it at its base. Next, we're going to energy flow. Energy enters an ecosystem through photosynthesis. This is where light energy is converted into chemical energy in the form of glucose. Plants use 90% of the glucose that they make for cellular respiration. So plants use both photosynthesis and cellular respiration. That's why they're called autotrophs or self-feeders. Energy flows through ecosystems by food chains. A food chain is a simple feeding relationship. All it means is species A eats species B, and species B is eaten by species C, etc. The arrow represents the flow of energy. It just so happens to point to the eater. Only 10% of the energy is passed on. The other 90% is used by the organism for cellular respiration to generate heat and ATP. A trophic level is a feeding level. Plants are trophic level 1 as they feed themselves. An autotroph, also known as a producer, makes its own food. A heterotroph, also known as a consumer, eats another organism for food. Herbivores eat plants, carnivores eat animals, and omnivores eat both plants and animals. Next, we're going to look at ecological pyramids. Ecological pyramids are diagrammatic representations of food chains. There are three types of ecological pyramids: the pyramid of numbers, the pyramid of biomass, and the pyramid of energy. First, we'll do the pyramid of numbers. The pyramid of numbers represents a food chain. The length of the bar represents the number of species. So a long bar is many individuals of that species. The units are the number of organisms in each trophic level. The bottom layer is the producers, and the top layer is the apex predator. This pyramid can be inverted, which means there can be one large producer, like a large oak tree, as in the diagram. Next is the pyramid of biomass. Biomass is related to the pyramid of numbers. Biomass is the dry weight of the organic matter, so all of the water has been removed. Again, the bar length represents the biomass of the trophic level. The units are kilograms per square metre. The bottom layer is the producers, the top layer is the apex predators, and this pyramid can also be inverted when there is a rapid turnover of the producers, like the regeneration of phytoplankton. Last, we have the pyramid of energy that cannot be inverted. Only 10% of the energy is passed on to the next trophic level. Again, the bar length represents the energy in each trophic level. The units are kilograms per square metre per year. Again, the bottom layer is the producer and the top layer is the apex predator. And as I said before, the pyramid cannot be inverted because energy is constantly lost as it moves through the food chain. Next, we've got how humans destroy ecosystems. And the first thing is climate change. The Earth is only habitable because of the greenhouse effect. This is a natural effect. But humans are accelerating the pace of this natural variation. The release of greenhouse gases is driving climate change. Greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, water, and nitrous oxide. All of these gases can store heat, and this changes the temperature and rainfall within an ecosystem, and that's what we call climate. Next is bushfires. Australia is drying out. With continental drift, Australia is moving northwards at about 5 centimetres a year, and its climate is changing. Australia is warming up. Australia has always had bushfires. However, with climate change, our summers are becoming drier and warmer, and therefore we're having more fires. Summer is starting sooner and lasting longer. Now, the Aborigines, when they arrived 65,000 years ago, brought with them the practice of patchwork burning, sometimes called fire stick farming. They use it to burn the landscape in patches, and from this plants have become adapted to fire. We call these plants serotinous plants, and some of their adaptations are epicormic buds that are used to create lateral growth, oily leaves for a rapid, fast fire that doesn't cause too much damage, and thick bark that is used as an insulator to the fire. With fires, there's not just the negatives, there are also positives. There is nutrient recycling, where any nutrients that are trapped in the trees are now released back to the soil. The ash bed effect, where the nutrients released aid in the quick regeneration of the seedlings. Reduce competition for sunlight, so all the trees can grow at an equal rate. It has also reduced leaf litter, which stops large bushfires occurring. After a bushfire comes regeneration. We call this process succession. Succession starts with a pioneer species, and after a fire these are grasses, and ends with a climax community, and we know we have a climax community when we have shade-tolerant plants. Now, next we're moving on to droughts and flooding. Climate change is leading to changes in rainfall. Floods wash away the topsoil, and a drought allows the topsoil to blow away in the wind. The topsoil is the top 10% of the soil that holds all the nutrients. Without topsoil, plants find it very hard to grow. Next is overharvesting. Overharvesting is where humans take too many organisms from an ecosystem. They take them so quickly that the species can't reproduce naturally, and so they become extinct. This also decreases biodiversity and can lead to ecosystem collapse or destabilization. Then we have introduced species. An introduced species is a foreign species brought into an ecosystem where it doesn't belong, and we do it for the benefit of humans. When the introduced species arrives in the ecosystem, it wreaks havoc because there are no natural predators. It can bring disease with it. It will outcompete the native species for resources. It will reproduce rapidly. It will cause damage to the environment with its activities like rabbits digging holes. And it will destabilize the ecosystem, leading to a loss of biodiversity. And they can be controlled 3 ways. There's biological control, physical control, and chemical control. Biological control uses another species to control the pest species. Physical control is where we cull the organism to remove it for good, and chemical control is the use of poisons like 1080. 1080's name is sodium fluoroacetate, and the endemic species of Australia are immune to 1080, but it does kill introduced species. Last of all, we have habitat destruction and pollution. Habitat destruction is due to human productivity, such as urbanization, mining, logging, and agriculture. It's the removal of all the trees to make way for humans. This removes the ecosystem, leading to the loss of biodiversity. And last of all, we have pollution. We have air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, plastic pollution, and noise pollution. Air pollution is caused by the release of fumes into the atmosphere. It affects the respiratory surfaces of animals, and toxins will be stored in the fat layers of animals and can build up in the organism and create severe illness and death. In water pollution, wastes are released into stormwater drains and they end up in oceans and lakes. Waste such as oil and grease and fertilizer and toxic waste enter our waterways. It comes in contact with the skin and digestive systems of our native species and affects the metabolisms of the native species and can lead to death. Soil pollution is where chemicals from humans enter the soil. Chemicals such as pesticides and herbicides and heavy metals and waste chemicals are absorbed by organisms and affect the health of the native species. This can lead to eutrophication and biomagnification. All parts of food chains and food webs are affected. The toxins are non-biodegradable and remain in the soil forever. Plastic pollution is mainly from single-use plastic bags. They break down or depolymerize due to exposure from sunlight. This results in microplastics in the soil and water. Microplastics enter the food chains and microplastics become poisonous to organisms. Then last of all, there is noise pollution. Noise from traffic, from industry, from urbanization, from mining, from humans being humans. Noise can make organisms want to leave their habitat. This reduces biodiversity and disrupts food chains and food webs, which will lead to the collapse of the ecosystem. Thank you for paying attention. If you've made it this far, I'll let you like and subscribe, and I'll catch you later. Goodbye.